4, 3, 2, 1.
In a hurricane, tornado, or earthquake, would you bet your life that the internet and cell phones still work? Would you bet the lives of your family? I don't think so. Ham radio. It works.
Hello, George here, KD4MXA, with a short video about ARES. The Amateur Radio Emergency Service consists of licensed amateurs who have voluntarily registered their qualifications and equipment with their local ARES leadership for communications duty in public service when disaster strikes. I have provided a form on the Rowan Cares website that you can fill out and return to me, or bring it to a club meeting and someone will get it to me. If you wish to email it to me, my address is kd4mxa@arrl.net. Every licensed amateur, regardless of membership in ARRL or any other local or national organization, is eligible to apply for membership in ARES. Training may be required or desired to participate fully in ARES. More information on specific training can be found on the Rowan Cares website. Because ARES is an amateur radio program, only licensed amateur radio operators are eligible for membership. The possession of emergency-powered equipment is desirable, but it is not a requirement for membership. Public service communications performed by ARES members are based on a number of requirements. Specifically, we must be accepted by the public safety officials. Once accepted, our continued ability to contribute in times of disaster is based on the efficiency and effectiveness of our performance. While acceptance, image, efficiency, and effectiveness are all important to the ongoing working relationships between amateurs and officials, it is the initial acceptance that is the most difficult to achieve. Emergency officials tend to be very cautious and skeptical concerning those who are not members of the public safety professions. This posture is based primarily on experiences in which well-intended but somewhat overzealous volunteers have complicated and in some cases jeopardized efforts in emergencies. The amateur operator or other volunteer who wishes to be of assistance must be aware of this perception. Emergency service personnel have generally had their fill of groupies or hangers-on. They can ill afford to tolerate frustrated individuals who have always wanted to be police officers or firefighters, but for one reason or another have never reached that objective. There seems to be an abundance of people, especially during a crisis, who will quickly overstep the limits of their authority and responsibility if they are given any opportunity to assist in an official capacity. In their zeal, such persons often inhibit the actions of trained personnel, or worse yet, they can make an already dangerous situation even more so by getting in the way. With rare exception, amateur radio operators do not fall into this category. The problem is, however, that emergency personnel in the midst of stressful operations may have extreme difficulty in distinguishing between those volunteers who are problem solvers and those who are problem makers. Those very few hams who behave emotionally or overzealous in offering their services or in describing their abilities or who abuse the established limits of their authority are doing the amateur fraternity a real disservice. The typical police officer or firefighter, like the typical civilian, does not understand the vast differences among various radio services, the types of licensing involved, or the high level of expertise and discipline that is characteristic of the amateur radio service. When an amateur arrives at the scene and jumps out of his vehicle with a hand held in each fist and two more clipped to the belt, all squawking at once, officials simply don't know how to respond. They are either overwhelmed by equipment they don't understand, or so awestruck that they try to avoid what they perceive as threatening. How amateur radio volunteers are accepted depends on their establishing a track record of competent performance in important activities. This begins with convincing officials that amateurs offer a cost-effective, you can read into this free, substitute for functions previously paid for by the taxpayer. Local radio amateurs also must demonstrate that they are organized, disciplined, and reliable, and have a sincere trust in public service. Ham radio has served in many disasters around the world. Multiple hurricanes, especially Katrina, has brought to light just how easy Mother Nature can destroy public service communications.
communication was gone. Cell phones died, nothing worked.
Without the ham radios, we were not able to communicate with our shelters because the phone lines are down. We weren't able to communicate with our other resources like FEMA and MEMA and the Office of Emergency Management.
With no communication whatsoever, with all the systems down, it was very important to Dr. O'Brien.
Communications are extremely fragile, and that tends to be our biggest issue.
As soon as the wind died down just a little, I was up stringing antennas up on the roof. Immediately began to pass emergency traffic, physicians, nurses, any state, bring your license. We need medical supplies, additional vaccines, tetanus.
I was handling HF traffic, emergency traffic, and a lot of it. There were requests for rescue. There were still people trapped in dormitories at some of the universities in New Orleans. I handled a lot of emergency traffic there. Tough, massive. Yeah, let's face it, this is the greatest natural disaster we've had in the United States. It's really been an experience for me, and I'm glad to help.
I wound up setting up in a Walmart parking lot. I was receiving traffic over the HF net, a lot of search and rescue. People trapped in attics, people trapped on roofs. There was a woman in labor with serious complications, and she was not going to make it if she didn't get out. They couldn't get a helicopter into that hospital. The helicopter got into Tulane Hospital, and then they had a boat en route to pick her up. And we had her ready to go, and getting in the boat, she got out safely and got into the chopper. That was a real heartwarming experience.
Because I am from New Orleans, this region is a very deep and super important part of who I am. I had to do something. This is my first emergency as a ham radio operator. We put up an antenna at the Red Cross headquarters in Brookhaven, set them up with a radio base, moved down to Gulfport, did some work there, slept in a school. It's better than sitting home and watching it on TV. It's very difficult for me because I'm from New Orleans. I went ahead and got my ticket after 9/11 because I wanted to be of some use. I love the idea of talking on the radio to people on the other side of the planet who you've never seen. And so I did it so that I would be of use. And it's paid off. It's really paid off.
It was such a relief to myself and Dr. Muller and Dr. Bryan to have Mike and all those people out there that helped to communicate with him. It's definitely a definite, warm, heartfelt thank you from me and from our staff.
Without the ham operators, we really don't have a way to communicate. And I'd like to say to the ham operators that helped us with this hurricane that they have been a wonderful asset. They've always had a smile on their face, they work really long, hard hours, and they were there to support us in every way that they could. So I say a heartfelt thank you from the shelter members, from the staff, and also from the Red Cross.
Cell phones, landline telephones, internet, email. Outside of that, what is there? I mean, if it's all down, it's down, and if you can't get at the airwaves via the ham operators, then there's no communication. Thanks, guys.
Myself personally and the Red Cross truly offers their complete and wholehearted thanks. And I think the American people offer their thanks in that the people in this area are really appreciative of what their efforts are, because from what I understand, you're all doing this as full volunteers. No recompense, you're paying your own way, and that goes really above and beyond anything that I have known before. So a very wonderful, heartfelt thanks, and keep coming back. And if there's anything that we can do for you guys, let us know.
Ham radio was there to pick up the slack until public service communications were brought back online. Here is FEMA Director Craig Fugate and a few of his thoughts on ham radio.
Four broad areas, because I think, when we talk about communications and we talk about the public, oftentimes I almost get a sense we pit one against the other in how we describe things. I think we talk a lot about social media at the expense of the broadcasters. I think we talk a lot about public safety communications, but then we come back to broadband. And then there's one group that we never talk about, but they were the ultimate backups, and they were the originators of what we call social media, and that's the amateur radio operators. So, yeah, you guys are here. I've got to come back to amateur radio. The initial communications out of Haiti, some of the communications at various parts, and we go back and forth across these disasters, is volunteers using assigned frequencies that they're allocated, their own equipment, their own money, nobody pays them. We're the first ones oftentimes getting word out in the critical first hours and first days as the rest of the systems came back up. And I think that there's a tendency that because we have done so much to build infrastructure and resiliency in all of our other systems, we have tended to dismiss that role when everything else fails. Amateur radio oftentimes is our last line of defense. And I think at times we get so sophisticated and we have gotten so used to the reliability and resilience in our wireless and wired and our broadcast industry and all of our public safety communications that we can never fathom that they'll fail. They do. They have. They will. And I think a strong amateur radio community that's plugged into these plans, most of the time they're going to be bored because there's not a lot they're going to be doing that people aren't doing with Twitter and Facebook and everything else. But when you need amateur radio, you really need them. So 4 broad areas, all equally important, all key to one mission, and that is meeting the needs of survivors and helping them deal with the challenges that they face.
9/11 brought even more attention to the abilities of ham radio.
When the towers went down, so did almost all forms of communication. That's when the ham radio operators sprang into action.
Once the towers collapsed and everything went black in here, people were just dumbfounded. Everybody's trying to talk at once, and people pick up their cell phones and couldn't get through.
It was a day guys like Charlie Hargrove and Mark Phillips trained for. They communicate on amateur radios, and when disaster strikes, they get messages through when no one else can.
When it finally happens, you just go into automatic. You don't even think about it.
The city was virtually paralyzed, and ham radios were about the only way to talk. So Charlie, Mark, and some 250 volunteers spread out, backing up the city's systems 24 hours a day.
Down at ground zero.
They got word to frantic relatives, worked at shelters, even pulled people off the streets. But they're the ones you don't see or read about.
I wouldn't say that we were heroes. We're doing our job. Just being out there, the sense of being part of the community and just helping out. If I've got the ability and I've got the time, why not?
And that's a true hero. Andrea Day, Fox 5 News.
Who can forget the tsunamis in Thailand and more recently, Japan? The wildfires in Colorado destroyed towers used by public safety.
It's been a rough year with fires here in Colorado, and they're still burning right outside our town about 20 miles away. So ARES is stepping in, helping out with the Red Cross shelters. So this was the first picture Jeff took from our front porch saying, I don't know what's going on, but it's bad. And the next photo is from my dad's house. Same thing, about the same time, saying, uh-oh, something is bad. About that time, we started reading on the news about the bridge fires. Now, see this red circle here? This is a before picture of the bridge, of course. And that's where we've done special events. Oh. And this is the after picture. It looks like a war zone, you guys. It's really terrible. It has been... Actually, these are our childhood memories, so anybody that's been there. Now, these are some before and after pictures. So there's the water clock tower before and after. The next one is the tram before and after. Oh. Isn't that awful, you guys? It's sad. The next one is the admissions gate, where there's just nothing left at all. And here's tourists with all of this smoke right there at the admissions gate, and they're not running for their lives. I thought they were crazy. I don't understand. They're just sitting there looking at it. I would run. The carousel. This is a really creepy picture to me. I know it is. It's just terrible. 48 out of 52 structures burned. And that's my dog barking in the background. Here's some planks that burnt on the bridge. 32 or 33 planks have burnt up on it. And this is us at our ARES shelter, giving communications for Red Cross back to their chapter up in the Colorado Springs area. So Jeff and Phil, my guys, and this is us thanking the firefighters for all of their hard work.
The list is almost endless. We are currently working on developing relationships with local emergency management, but it will take time. Rowan County has a very robust communication system, and in my 25 years in the fire service, I cannot remember a significant communications failure. It doesn't mean it can't happen. There was a recent cable cut in a state, I don't remember where. It rendered their communications useless, and amateur radio stepped up to fill the void. For the most part, Rowan ARES relays weather information to the National Weather Service in Greenville-Spartanburg. We have a few ways to do this. If I'm available, I log into the National Weather Service chat room and relay all information directly to them. If Charlotte Regional Skywarn has a net up, we can relay to them. They are on the W4BFB repeater system with a frequency of 145.230, negative offset, and a 118.8 tone. To guard against unnecessary radio traffic during net activations, there are reporting criteria that should be met before relaying information. In the event of severe weather, the National Weather Service looks for the following criteria: hail, any size initially, and then 3/4 inch or larger thereafter, measured wind speeds of 50 miles per hour or greater, measured rainfall of 1 inch or more that occurs within an hour's time or less, flooding and flash flooding where none normally occurs, rotating wall clouds, funnel clouds, or tornadoes, damage caused by high winds such as downed limbs and trees and their approximate diameter, and building and roof damage. Spotter reports are always needed when severe weather is occurring. However, please note that the National Weather Service defines severe weather criteria. Please do not make non-criteria reports unless specifically requested to do so by the Net Control Station. They also have criteria for winter weather and for tropical weather, and you can look them up on the Rowan Cares website to see what those are. We will rarely have to set up a formal net through the N4UH repeater, but if the information or traffic begins to overwhelm the operator, a formal net can be brought up and the courtesy tone will be switched to the ARES tone. If the repeater is in ARES mode, please listen to the Net Control Station for information that they are specifically looking for. This will greatly help in getting the information relayed to the appropriate people. When setting up a net, please identify only as Rowan County ARES. Staying consistent with our name helps people recognize who we are. We are working on developing relationships with local leadership, but if you have ever worked with a government agency, you know this is not a speedy process. The best thing for us to do is stay prepared and vigilant. Keep your batteries charged, keep training, and keep having fun in this great hobby we call ham radio. The time will come when we are called to help, and we will be ready. If you would like to know more about ARES, you can visit our website at rowancares.org. I will try and write a small article each month and get it to Ralph so he can put it in the Harmonics newsletter to keep everybody up to date on ARES happenings around the county and around the state. Until next time, this is George, KD4MXA 73.